We've talked a little bit about, who are some of the major players in the space. We talked a little bit about Apple Pay and Google Pay. We've talked about how PayPal recently has verticalized, which is really interesting with the acquisition of Braintree. What about other e-com providers? Like, how are they likely to evolve in this space, particularly with Shopify? Shopify is so top of mind for people. What have we kind of seen, especially as it pertains to payments in our space, Ryan?
Yeah, well, e-commerce is how it's always been, at least since online payments has really been a thing. That's been the solution. Go to a website, add the items to cart, make a purchase. That's how it's always been. That's what Shopify is built for. That's what all these providers are built for. And clearly that solution is going to need to exist in the market forever. There's just always a reason to buy that way.
Right. Just like you'll always need to maybe go into a physical store for something.
Exactly.
Right? It's become a natural part of our world, but maybe just not as an efficient one as it used to be, right?
Yeah, well,
for all the reasons we talked about.
If you build a one-size-fits-all solution, you won't be amazing at anything, but you'll be good at a little bit of everything.
Yeah,
right?
That's true.
And so they are the de facto solution. If you make an ad today, put it on Instagram, and have a swipe up, it's going to take you to a website. That's the de facto solution. That's what everyone's been using. The thing is, we already know that converts at 1% to 2%. That's locked in. It's just, you're stuck in that world. You know that only 1% of the people who see that ad are actually going to ever make a purchase. And so that's being good at a little bit.
And is Whym ever going to be a part of like one of those, checkout buttons in your mind?
Today they already are, right? Like today you can swipe up straight to Whym. And the difference in what your consumer sees is it's very narrowly focused to them being in that channel, in that moment, and how they're going to deal with you in that space. And so we narrow the customer's focus on the specific products that you're interested in. We narrow the customer's focus on the decisions they have to make. And then we give them a very simple solution to either make a purchase or to basically remind themselves that they want to remember you so that they can come back later and finish that deal when it's on their time.
It was one of the key insights that we really saw, right? There was this opportunity to reduce that paradox of choice, which I think a lot of consumers are faced with as they get to that website. Once again, like, where is the product merchandise? Am I going to go through this entire exercise of building a cart? What's really amazing about how we've architected the cart technology is that, you can actually, we're pre-building a cart.
Yeah.
Right? But it has the ability to be personalized, which is really special. There's nothing quite like it in the market yet. And it takes advantage of the in-app mobile browser, which I know you know a lot about and have studied like intimately.
Yep.
And so, Whym's technology is not only this payment for either impulse buy or intent to buy later, but it's also this cart technology where you can share a cart with 1 million of your customers at the same time. And then in real time, they can personalize, their selection. How do you think about, the in-app mobile browser being such a key component of how we've, decided to really build the technology?
Well, there are a variety of things that a browser has solved for the world that messaging channels have not even begun to think about how to solve. Like security. How do you take a credit card over a text message? You definitely do not
want... Oh my gosh, that terrifies people.
You definitely do not want to have a card entered into your text message history. Not only is it in the customer's phone history, it's in the carrier's phone logs.
Oh my gosh, I have to close my eyes for this part. I can't look.
I mean, it's a mess and it's really dangerous and scary. And so luckily for us, every messaging SMS application out there has the ability to deep link into a web browser. And the browsers they use kind of slide over the messaging app like a drawer and then go away right back to the messaging app when you're done using them. But you get to take advantage of all of the security around HTTPS. You get to take advantage around all the things that have been done for PCI compliance in the browser space. You get to take advantage of all the user experiences that you can use to, for instance, help the customer select the right product. And you don't have to create these wonky little like reply A, reply B, reply the name of the product you want kind of experience.
Keyword cart building, which we tried a bunch of that, right? Because that was the natural inclination, like, oh, okay, maybe consumers would be comfortable with, building through keywords. And it turns out they're just not really comfortable with, those types of experiences just yet. Not that they won't be in the future,
Exactly.
right? And the idea of entering a hashtag, or, there are some familiar design paradigms that really kind of work with that.
We have identified some interesting use cases where those are very useful things that can happen in the world. And we know how to do them. But most of the transactions we see happening online are not those.
Yeah.
Right? Most of the transactions that we're seeing brands trying to build their customers are not, they're not catered to a reply to buy kind of environment yet.
Definitely.
But there are cases that work. If you're interested in them, come talk to us and we'll help you out.
That's the enterprise solution.
That's right.
And I do think that's really important to note. And maybe there will be a time in the future where, as messaging and conversational commerce evolves, that people will be more familiar with that. We really only have one key call to action that we use for keywords, right? Which is essentially reply why, right?
Yes.
Reply why to buy. We've aimed ourselves specifically at, using that cart technology and that payment technology and essentially rebuilding the customer's order for them, because they've already given us that data, right? Which is sort of one of our, the things that has gotten under my skin. I know we've talked about it a lot, but it's like, the original thesis and mission of the company was, there's all this data that exists out there on my buying behavior, right? And, why isn't a company, it's not a technical problem. It's simply that someone hasn't reassembled the digital Legos, in sort of this particular frame or workflow. And that's really what we've set out to do. One thing about that, Ryan, that I always found really interesting about how you tell the story is, talk to me a little bit about why you felt that Snapchat wouldn't, build a solution, or an Instagram wouldn't necessarily have built, this type of meaningful commerce experience for the customer.
And we've mentioned before about how a channel, you consider Instagram or Snapchat a specialized channel. They really are. They're walled garden channels. They're the sole provider of the capability of communicating in that space. And we've already talked about how if you use the walled gardens solution for commerce, it only works in the walled garden, and your customer is going to move from garden to garden to garden as their interests change. Yeah. And so, last year it was Snapchat, now it's TikTok. Next year it's going to be something that we don't even know. And if you can't follow your customer around that, that's perhaps the biggest reason why we've seen companies like Snapchat probably won't build.
And that's really consumer engagement driven. It's really the consumer making the choice, and the brand saying, I'm willing to kind of meet you, where you're at. And then what about the way that Snapchat makes money? How is that tied to this?
The alternative, the other frame for this is, from the inside, we've seen, you and I have both tried to do some level of commerce inside of the Snapchat ecosystem. Yeah. And what we saw, part of it was how to build relationships. Part of it was a variety of other, contractual things or just user experiences. But really what it boiled down to is incentives inside the space. If I get paid every time I send an ad, and right now I can make you pay for 56 ads before the person buys, and you're cool with that and you'll pay for that and you're happy with that relationship, then I am taking a lot of money from you and not interested in closing that deal just yet. But in order for a company to provide a commerce solution that really solves the brand and the consumer situation, they need to be completely uninterested in what messages
the dollars
are going.
have to really tie together, which is why we spent a lot of time talking today about how do these different entities within the financial stack, essentially get paid? How do they all get their little slice of the pie? And what's interesting about what you just mentioned about, Snapchat and Instagram is a great segue into this sort of last, particular channel that we intersect at, which is messaging, right? And so we've talked a lot about how messaging providers, so the providers that host your phone number, they help you build that list of consumers, right? Collect their phone numbers, maybe even tie them together with your e-commerce orders, or provide some type of CRM. Most of them are one-way dialogue, maybe some are two-way dialogue, but all of these solutions, they get paid when you send a message.
Exactly.
So really they're just another advertising platform.
Yeah, we like to call them the advertisers of the SMS space. Yeah.
and Whym just isn't positioned that. Our business model is aligned to making money when the merchant makes money, right? And that's actually how we talk a lot about that with brands and businesses. We make money when you make money. The same way that those alternative payment methods like Klarna and Afterpay and Affirm that are providing this value, our value add, it just happens to be monetization within messaging, right? Turning those conversations into cash opportunities or closing the sales, like often what we really talk about.
And the best part is we don't need to integrate with any of these messaging providers to do it. So that means that it doesn't matter what provider you're using today. And if a new provider pops in the market tomorrow, we're instantly ready and available to work on them.
Right.
You don't have to wait for us to integrate. You don't have to wait for us to develop partnerships. We work everywhere you can imagine on the internet.
Yeah, and a lot of companies have spent, kind of like death by integration,
exactly.
right? Just like maintaining all of those things. And so Whym has found a way to not only build in a capital efficient way, serve our customers who are sellers at the same time, but also do this in a way that our technology is going to scale with you as the brand or business, right? Or our customers as the brand or business. For a long period of time based on how we've built that technology. And then, kind of as the messenger, we've made some key decisions around not being the messenger, not hosting 100%. The phone number. Yep. What's going to happen, Ryan? There are actually some messengers that have decided to maybe dabble in building a payment solution that solves maybe one really important use case for their merchant base or something like that. How should brands and businesses really think about choosing a payment and a cart technology in that particular space as that channel evolves, in the near and maybe long-term future?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've touched on this a couple times now, but these providers, they're trying to solve a real problem. They recognize that the moment of commerce does happen on their channel. And they're trying to figure out how can we help the brands capitalize on that, but also how can we capitalize on that. Mm-hmm. And the unfortunate situation they find themselves in is that they're the channel of the moment. And they may not be the channel of the moment tomorrow. And they may be the channel of the moment for this brand, but not necessarily for that brand. So as you as a brand are thinking through what provider do I want to use, Whym's message is, if you pick Whym, you don't have to care what messaging channel you're on today and tomorrow. You just take us with you wherever you go.
Right.
And that really empowers not just you as the merchant to basically continue to use the same software, the same providers, the same capabilities everywhere you meet your customer, but also empowers the customer. Every time they meet you, it's the same experience. No matter if they met you through DriftBot today and then tomorrow emailed you and then tomorrow texted you, no matter how they meet your brand, they're going to encounter a familiar, friendly experience that they've seen 100 times before. And then, even more interesting, if they've been doing that with another brand that you've never even that's completely unrelated to you, but is related to Whym in some way, and maybe in a completely different industry even, and then they come meet you and you're also using Whym, well, their interest in buying has gone up because it's familiar and it meets their needs and it's channel focused, and it's not, this genericized environment that e-commerce has become. It really focuses on what they're doing at that moment and helping them transact when they are ready on the channels that they're on.
Yeah, and just, to kind of summarize what you're saying, there are platforms out there that are going to host your phone number, right? So they're going to work on SMS. A great example of this is like Attentive, right? You might send your mass messaging through Attentive, but the payment solution that an Attentive would provide or could provide maybe at some point in the future, they are not going to be able to take that over and use it on WhatsApp or on a swipe up ad, right? Yep. And so as the brand or business, you're going to have to make this choice. Also, let's say you find a different SMS provider tomorrow that better fits your needs. You can't take all of your customers, now you've got their payment information and their card. You don't have to onboard them again. Yeah. And we've talked about this a little bit too, but to kind of grab a page from the history book, eBay in its early days, really, they built a payment solution that only worked on their...
It was called Bill Pay, I believe.
Bill Point, that's
Bill
right.
Point, yes.
And so Bill Point was their solution for a particular use case for their customers. And what happened was, PayPal was ubiquitous, and PayPal was also a solution like Whym, where, we onboard our customer only using the mobile phone number. So we onboard the customer using that mobile phone number, and we do it once and forever, right? And then it's a ubiquitous solution. You can use that across SMS, you can use it over any DM channel. And the customer gets to have not only that convenience, but like you said before, that trust and confidence of associating Whym with that messaging point of sale. And I think that's going to be really important as we start to look at, Whym is the first of its kind. Who are those other payment providers that are going to emerge in the space, create value, things like that.
Well, and in addition to that, there are things that PayPal should have done they never did. And we are, due to the nature of how we're taking transactions, we had to focus on those things first rather than just payments, right?
And what are some of those things,
And so,
Ryan?
the most important thing is a customer is going to meet you, and they may love you or soon will love you. They want to engage more, but they're just not going to engage fully to the depth of purchase and become a strongly converted customer right now. And so Whym is saying there's actually a large moment between the moment they meet you and the time they want to pay, where we need to do a better job helping that customer maintain their relationship to you, really develop that partnership and that knowledge and see those impressions they need to see without you being so in their face all the time with 56 impressions that they didn't ask for. Let them give themselves impressions of you by letting them keep you in a list of, in a place where they're maintaining their relationship with you themselves. And then after they've checked out, Whym has this unique capability to help them re-engage with you so that you keep that customer and help convert them into a more long-term, not so shallow one-time purchase customer, but a customer that's with you forever.
Yeah, and that feature in beta is called Smart Repurchase, right?
Yeah.
Where it's essentially really harnessing what I believe the power of programmatic messaging is. Messaging is a really special space. We've got high open rates, one-to-one unique experiences where you have direct access to the customer. And it's almost as if programmatic messaging came in and was like this perfect fit to solve a problem. A lot of times when we talk about this story, Ryan, we talk about, ad technology really focuses on the what.
Yeah.
But Whym's value proposition is to combine the what and the when through one-to-one experiences that the brand doesn't have to lift a finger to basically activate, right?
Yep.
So we can, help to close that sale on behalf of the brand or business with that customer without the brand having to go in and segment a list and push a button to hit send. And then it feels impersonal because it goes out to 30,000, people with a particular offer. We can use that data that we're collecting and the programmatic messaging to actually create those one-to-one experiences that have a higher likelihood of closing the sale more than your e-commerce site, right? And more than that mass message that just doesn't necessarily feel like it was built for you.
And in our iteration on this service, the programmatic messaging that exists in the market today, it's being built by companies who get paid for how many messages they send.
Right.
And so the incentive for them
important.
is to send more messages rather than close more deals.
Yep.
And so Whym's, we're using very similar technologies to these players. We're just building them with a different incentive structure that really says like, hey, Whym is taking on the effort of figuring out what customers should be segmented and why, and how can we contact them, and let's get them back into the repurchase sale. And we get paid when we close the deal, which means that we're coming up with innovative ways to be smarter about that so that we're not oversaturating the customer with too much messaging, that the customer's only getting what they want to get, but that yet they're still engaging with you in a much deeper way than they ever did.
And I love how we kind of combine our two passions of how we see the SMS, space, right? You're always kind of joking with me that I use my text message like a teenager.
Yep.
And, I love the convenience of text message. You actually love text message because it is, it's precious. And you also know that you're going to always look to that space and you're going to open everything that comes into that space. And so we've really balanced with the technology and our approach to market of like, let's not recreate this email spam
Exactly.
situation.
Yeah.
Let's actually create more value for the customer by potentially delivering them less messages,
Yep.
but by aiding in their memory and aiding in that frictionless experience and that convenience, right, to help close the sale not only once on behalf of the brand, but to really build that lifetime value that we talked about at the beginning of, the first session.
That's right. Yeah.
And, I think that is the way that Whym can create value, and these types of alternative payment methods can create value. The last thing I want to talk about is, how should we think about payment security evolving? There's so much going on right now with messaging. It's kind of this old and new space at the same time. And there's a new program called Verified Sender.
Sure, yeah.
And you've often referred to this as the rise of the blue checkmark, right?
Yep.
Can you tell us, a little bit more about, talk about Verified Sender and what that really means for the industry, for consumers, and how brands and businesses should be thinking about this?
Yeah, so the blue checkmark is something we've all become a little bit familiar with now. It really was pioneered in the social commerce spaces.
That's right.
And it was an excellent solution. They were the first to recognize that people were impersonating the real individual, and how could you trust that these messages were coming from the people that you really want to trust? Blue checkmark gave you the capability of saying, we know that this person is who they say they are.
I remember getting messages from, brands or influencers at Snapchat who, knew I worked there, and they would say, hey, can you tell the partnerships team to give me the blue check box? This is
oh yeah, everyone wants a blue
really
check mark.
Me, And so it really does. It has been used as this sort of certification of trust and confidence, and that you've got the right account idea.
Right. It's great that was pioneered in the space, but now the SMS world has finally realized, oh my gosh, we can use this and it can solve some major problems for us. Historically, the way that the SMS space differentiated between an individual talking to an individual versus a company talking to an individual was that you just had to put a lot of money down. You had to buy this thing called a short code. You would spend thousands of dollars on it per year just to have it. Plus you just had to pay your messaging costs. Plus it took 4 months to even get one. And so it was really hard to get this, but that's how they could tell the consumer that you were someone more than just a normal person talking on the phone.
It was almost like, entering a credit card during sign up, right? It helps reduce spam and, just kind of, it makes sure that people are serious about using that channel.
So that was the historical way of doing it. And the problem was that a bunch of brands said, okay, well, I don't want to pay that bill, so we're going to share a code. And by sharing the code, we're going to, divide that cost among ourselves. But then that became a big problem because any one bad actor who shared that code could ruin the game for everyone sharing that code, because the SMS carriers couldn't tell the difference between you and whoever else was sending on the channel.
Right. And so as a consumer, if I'm getting, messages from Skims and Verishop and, Kylie Cosmetics, all of those brands could have been on one number.
Yeah.
And so if at some point, let's say I got, someone was sending me just a lot of messages, they weren't relevant, I got my 20% off, discount, and I'm not getting any more value, right, out of these marketing promotions. If I say stop, one good thing is that, Verizon and AT&T, they've actually set a rule, right? They've said if someone says stop, you can no longer, at the carrier level, your cell phone carrier is protecting your inbox.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so, they kind of said, okay, no more sending. Well, that means that unknowingly you have now unsubscribed from
an untold number of brands.
Yeah, without really knowing it. Because
Exactly.
those rules weren't really told to the consumer, which wasn't very fair. And then kind of like you said, created a massive compliance issue within the industry. So, bring us up to speed, Ryan. Now what's going on?
So Verified Sender changes the whole game. Carriers are finally catching up. It's one piece of a variety of pieces of the puzzle that they're using to basically say, hey, stop sharing short codes. That's not allowed anymore. Every brand gets an individualized, personalized number. You can actually have more than one if you want, but all those numbers have to be verified against who's sending from them. And they're creating this signature that goes not just from the message being sent, but it goes across the entire network all the way to your phone. And all the devices and all the carriers in the between, they're all working really hard right now to basically eventually bubble that up to you as basically a blue check mark inside of your SMS thread. So you know that if you're talking to a brand, I won't name any brands, but let's say pick a brand in your mind, if that brand communicates with you, you'll know that that brand is who they say they are when they talk to you. And if you say stop, you're only saying stop to that brand. But one of the best technologies that's happening in SMS space is they're keeping that stop command. Email really made a mistake by not giving you a one-click button, like a one-size-fits-all solution to unsubscribe.
Yeah.
And so you don't even know, like
you just gotta hope.
You hope that they've unsubscribed.
And then you get another one.
Exactly.
And you're like, I feel like I did this.
Didn't I unsubscribe? I can't remember, right? And so you still have an inbox with thousands of emails.
So it's likely not going to happen in this space.
No,
potentially.
But brands who use the wrong playbook in this space are going to kill the channel for themselves. They can't kill the channel for everybody, thankfully.
Right.
But they can kill the channel for themselves by misusing it and making their customers unhappy. And so the carriers are working really hard to kind of help you plan what messages you're going to send. But at the end of the day, you can still send whatever you want to send. And if you get a lot of customers saying stop, you're going to kill your own ability to communicate with your customer.
And at least it eliminates kind of the bad actors or maybe the less relevant, folks that are putting that effort into marketing or evolving their thinking around the channel by creating more value with tools like Whym, right?
Yep.
Like Whym can create an incredible amount of value with converting your customers, delivering value to them over time. And so there are going to be lots of different types of tools like this that you can add to your messaging strategy, right? To continue to add value to those customers in a way that's really consumer centric, right? Yep. A lot of times when we see software built, it's really built more as brand centric, right? And I think utility software. And I think Whym actually does a really fantastic job of walking that line because we kind of built both sides of the experience at the same time.
Right.
And we're very unique because we're actually the only company that did that, right? We had those direct interactions with the brands and the customers. And so we kind of felt the pain of all of those, those different experiences and we're able to gain, kind of insights that way.
Yeah, I mean, what you're talking about is the history of how we came to the conclusions we came to, which is that we first started out by being the brand selling to these customers.
That's right.
And so we heard every complaint. We heard every happy message. We heard all the conversation in between and all the messages that may not have mattered to a computer, but mattered to our staff.
Totally.
Enough to help us gain the insights we needed to know this is how the consumers want to handle it. And those insights are impossible to learn any other way.
Yes.
And so now that we have them, it really influences everything we do. And it makes our solution very unique.